Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are going to start out with our very brief Liquor Commissioners meeting, which will give the crowd a chance to settle in before we get into the heavy stuff. So I would like to call the Liquor Commissioners meeting to order and
I move to adopt the agenda as written.
We have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one. Okay. Would you want to make a motion on the consent?
Well, first I move that we approve the minutes from the April 14 Liquor Control Commissioners meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one.
I move that we adopt a consent agenda for agenda items 3, 4, and 5 on the Liquor Control Commissioners agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the consent, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now taking those approval of the 3, 4, and 5, now that they're consent.
I move to adopt the consent. I move to approve items 3, 4, and 5.
Okay. Any discussion on any of those liquor permits? None heard. All in favor in 3, 4, and 5, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no one. Item 6 on the liquor control is public comment on liquor. Would anyone like to say anything on liquor other than they might like it? None heard. Item 7.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor of adjourning the liquor commissions, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now, Selectboard. Would I like to get a motion on the agenda?
I move to amend the agenda to move item 10, proposed resolution regarding due process and the constitutional rights of all Brandon residents, to slot number 3 on the agenda.
Okay. Someone second that? Okay. All in favor of the agenda, moving 10 up to slot 3, and then running with it from there, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one. Okay, item 2, select board remarks. That's my turn. I would just like to remind everyone, we have a large crowd tonight. Some of you are new to being here. First and foremost is to treat everyone with respect. We all have different opinions on things. And we're a friendly town that we see each other in the grocery stores and walking up and down the street and eating out at the bakery. So let's be sure to keep our remarks polite and kind. Secondly, for the record and for the Zoom, we need anyone who wants to speak has to come up to the podium so they can be into the microphone so that we can hear, and you need to state your name and then we will allow you to speak. Are we still doing the other minutes? Are we trying? We're also experimenting with a new form of minute taking through AI. And we have to, even ourselves have to identify ourselves regularly for AI to do our minutes. It's a potential savings of money issue up front down the road.
And I would also like to add, this is Cecil Renish, Vice Chair. If when someone is speaking, you have a question about what that person is saying, please do not address the question to the person. All remarks need to be addressed to the select board, so we can wait until the person has finished their speech. If you have a question, you can then approach, you can ask the select board to ask the question. We may be able to answer the question ourselves. It may not need answering, but address the select board and not conversing amongst each other.
Thank you. And I assume that there will be numerous people wanting to speak. When you want to speak, you raise your hand and I will call you forward. And for the desire of not wanting you all to stand there with your arms up in the air for hours on end. Once I see you, I will kind of nod to you and let you know that I have seen your hand up, and I will call you forward when it's your time to speak. It does not mean for you to run up and push the person out of the way who is currently speaking. It just means that I have seen you. We will give everyone a chance to speak who wants to.
And one more thing, because this is something I am guilty of, is wait till you get to the podium to start speaking. I'm one of those people that I'll stand up at the back of the room and I'll start talking. And so just wait till you get to the podium, just for Zoom, because they can't hear you till you're there.
Okay, so we're moving into our new, what was item 10, which is the new item 2.5, which is proposed resolution regarding due process and due constitutional rights of all Brandon residents. Sue Gage would like to speak on that. Rule breaker.
Sue Gage, Brandon resident and also town clerk and treasurer. I am the one who requested that this resolution be forwarded to the board as a person in town, just so you know. It came to all of us, the board members and myself, 2 or 3 weeks ago from Pete Franzoni, who's also here, and he may raise his hand to speak. Dear Brandon Select Board members, I respectfully submit the attached resolution for your review and support. This resolution seeks to reaffirm the board's commitment to the Vermont Constitution and the Constitution of the United States, specifically their guarantees for due process, safety, and fairness for all individuals. It is symbolic in nature. I understand the statutory limitations of your elected position, but sometimes we are called as elected officers to reaffirm our commitments, especially when it sends a message to our constituents that we respect them, we are committed to their safety, and we morally oppose any steps that compromise their rights and privileges within our town and within our state. The Vermont Constitution explicitly recognizes that every person possesses certain natural, inherent, and unalienable rights, including the right to pursue happiness and safety. Article 7 states that the government is established for the common benefit, protection, and security of the people. And Article 4 guarantees that every person within this state is entitled to seek legal remedies and obtain justice promptly and without delay. Furthermore, Article 9 protects every individual's right to be protected in the enjoyment of life, liberty, and property. These principles collectively make clear that the right to safety and justice is guaranteed to all who reside in Brandon and in Vermont, regardless of status. The U.S. Constitution reinforces this mandate through the 14th Amendment, which prohibits any state from depriving any person of life or liberty without due process of law, or denying any person equal protection under the law. It was originally ratified to extend protections to formerly enslaved individuals, but the 14th Amendment embodies the foundational principle that liberty and justice must apply to all persons without exception. These constitutional provisions place an affirmative duty on government to protect all residents from harm. Vermont law further affirms that public officers are trustees and servants of the people, accountable to them in their official duties. There is no constitutional justification for limiting the right to bodily security based on immigration status or membership in any other marginalized group. The principles of the 14th Amendment and Vermont's founding documents remind us that safety is not a privilege, but a right and essential to liberty and justice. Therefore, I respectfully urge the Select Board to adopt the attached resolution, and in doing so, reaffirm its solemn oath to uphold these constitutional obligations. Adopting this resolution will send a clear message that Brandon stands firmly in support of the constitutional rights and dignity of all who call our town home. Thank you for your time and consideration of this. And can I hand this to you as the secretary?
And Sue, I have one question, because the select board packet did include a draft of the resolution, but I believe since then it has been
That is the
edited.
original draft
Oh, okay.
still. So because that's the draft that was out there.
Oh,
So
okay.
I mean, if you want to alter it, I think
Okay.
this is the time to do it. I was
Okay. Fair enough.
thinking. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Sue. Other comments on item 10? Yes, sir.
My name is John Peterson, and I have been a student and teacher of history for over 50 years of my life. And I can't help but to see current events through the lens of history. Just briefly, in 1850, the United States Congress passed a fugitive slave law that required citizens anywhere in the United States to assist a marshal in stopping, arresting, and returning to slavery black individuals who had freed themselves of those bonds. Now, what happened was many states, with the urging of municipalities within those states, passed personal liberty laws that said people are entitled to due process. And people cannot be required willy-nilly to act as marshals for the federal government. Now, this passed in Vermont. Vermont had a personal liberty law. Many states had a personal liberty law. It passed at the urging of towns and municipalities. Given that this became Vermont law, and given the history of Brandon and its active participation in the anti-slavery movement, I believe that supporting this resolution is entirely consistent with the history and traditions of our town of Brandon and the state of Vermont. That's all I have to
Thank
say.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Next up on this subject. Yes, sir, in the
Mr.
back.
Franzoni.
Members of the Select Board, my name is Peter G. Franzoni. As a Rutland City citizen, I'm not one of your constituents, so I humbly thank you and people of Brandon for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you. Are there any other soldiers in the room? Active duty veterans? Anybody here? Might save me a little time. I'm not going to go into reading the whole statement and letter I mailed to you guys. That'll take a long time. I'm going to cut right down to basics. Tell you just a quick little bit about myself and what I'm here to talk about. As I said, I'm from Rutland City. My family immigrated there from Italy, Carrara, Italy, about 200 years ago to cut stone. My great-grandfather was the very first Vermont state detective, probably more widely known as being the main advocate for disassembling our highway patrol and replacing it with the Vermont State Police Union. Gino Franzoni, his nephew, was a combat war veteran, served Rutland City Patrolman for 8 years before serving as Rutland County Sheriff for 7 terms. Spent most of his free time building up the social institutions in Rutland like the Kiwanis, the Elks, the Moose Club, and most notably American Legion Post 31. And the framework he set up helped many other communities in the state build their own American Legions, including Post 55 right here in Brandon. My father was a land surveyor for 44 years. I worked with him and under him for 26 of those years, and then for the following 17 with other companies. Your land records vaults are filled with dozens and dozens of our survey plats, hundreds of pages of written descriptions and reports that we've done. Well, you may not know me, I know you. I know your community. I know your families. I know your land. I spent a number of years as a client intake facilitator and the facility operations manager at the Northeastern Family Institute's Hospital Diversion Program in Winooski, more commonly known as the E-beds or the crisis beds for adolescents and children. I helped hundreds of children. I saw hundreds of children and dozens of families, some of the worst and best the state has to offer. Some of those families right here from this town. I have spent hundreds of hours of my life in service to the lands and people of this community. So I feel it's kind of my right to speak here a little because this community is my home. It's part of my home. I myself am a veteran. I'm not a combat veteran. It's important you know that distinction about me. I don't carry that honor. More importantly, I don't carry the horrible weight that honor bestows. I'm very proud of my service to this country, to my fellow soldiers, but I've been a far greater service to my fellow soldiers as a veteran in the many years since I've been discharged. Probably the greatest honor I hold personally are the times in my life where I've had some of those service members that I've become friends with, especially those that hold that honorable distinction of being a combat veteran and have had enough respect and trust in me to share some of their experiences as such. I'm at a loss of words to describe that level of confidence. I'm humbled by it. It's probably the most cherished thing to me outside of a few things too personal to discuss here with you. I would never violate the sanctity of those conversations for anything. Not even torture would drag that out of me. But there are some things I'm here to talk about that they have told me that they would want me to, and I'm also honor bound to talk about them. Those soldiers sacrificed and died. And they did so because they were told we don't have Sharia law in America, because we do have due process in America, because we don't disappear our citizens off the street in America, or anyone off the street in America. They suffered, they bled, they died, they dragged themselves through the muck. And all we're asking is for our local boards to drag a pen across a piece of paper affirming that that sacrifice meant something. The Constitution is the basis of our law. You don't need to understand all of the amendments. You don't have to get in all the finities of it. All you need to know is that preamble. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote our general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. When they wrote that, there wasn't any laws. Nothing was written yet. They could have put everything they wanted in the beginning. They could have said, we the white men only. They could have said, we the Europeans and the hell of the Native Americans. They could have said, no woman allowed, no gay people allowed. They didn't. They said, everybody that was in America at that time, we the people, to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Everyone after them, everybody. Even if you're not familiar enough with the preamble of the Constitution, I doubt there's a person in this room that hasn't taken the Pledge of Allegiance. The United States Code of Military Justice tells us that our flag represents the living country. And that's why we treat it as a living thing itself. It's why we don't let it hit the ground. It's why we don't besmirch it, befoul it. And after you've seen a few of them draped over some military coffins, you maybe want to think twice about wearing it as a shirt on your butt as a bathing suit. It represents every newborn person in America. It represents our Medal of Honor recipients. It represents our law enforcement. And it represents you. Why I don't fly it off the back of my truck at 50 miles an hour down the interstate? Because it means something. And so does that Constitution. The basis of our law, the foundation of our law. And as powerful as it is, and as powerful as the rights that are enshrined within it, it's vulnerable, even powerless without us to support and defend it. My oath of enlistment. First thing on that oath says support and defend the Constitution. After that, obey the orders of the President of the United States and the officers appointed above me, according to the rules and regulations of the United States Code of Military Justice. There's a reason that one's first. The primacy is obvious. Without our Constitution, there is no justice. There is no domestic tranquility. There's no general welfare. And there's no liberty. You chip a piece of it, the whole thing falls. You say we're going to remove the rules for just these guys until we get the problem figured out. Well, that's a slippery slope because that means it's going to happen to anybody. Right now, the federal administration is holding to anyone that they declare legal is not going to be held for due process. That means right now, any federal authority can come and say, you're not a citizen, put a pair of cuffs on you, take you away and detain you. You're not ready for Miranda rights. You don't get to call a lawyer. You can't even call home to say, bring my birth certificate down and show them that I'm supposed to be here. It's a catch-22. If you don't have due process, you can't prove that you aren't what you're being accused of. I've been accused of being political. I've been accused of being partisan. To that I answer, we're being played. There's no left and right down in Washington, D.C. There's money and power down. You have all of the politicians, you have all the lobbyists paying them, you have the corporations paying the lobbyists, and you have the billionaires paying behind them. Out of all of those groups I've named, how many of those people do you think really care about your needs, your safety? 1%? They got us all scared. Every one of us are scared, left and right side of the aisle, both sides of the blue line. We're so scared of each other, we can't even smile at each other when we go to the grocery store anymore. When we look for answers, we're all looking at our phones and we're looking at the people, those same people are being paid. The media ain't behind you. They're just telling you to hate the other guy. Well, that other guy's an American. They got us all hating each other. That flag is the living country. When you pledge to that flag, you're pledging to your neighbors, your community members. Whether it's some fellow that wants to wear a dress and read stories to children, or it's some shit kicker with too many hunting licenses tearing up the road with his big truck. They're your neighbors. They're your fellow Americans. If you can't sit here and make a simple pledge to affirm that all of the sacrifices of the hundreds and thousands of soldiers, LEOs, civilians, and everybody else who has died to support and defend our Constitution, what are we here for? Thank you.
Jan Coolidge, I think.
Jan Coolidge, I would like to request the select board to table this issue for the fact that you changed the resolution that you posted and no one has read it yet.
So it hasn't been changed. I thought that it had not.
So
I
Sue
thought
said
that-
she had a different copy.
I thought that Sue had made a change to it. I was incorrect.
Okay, I just
Sorry.
felt that if it was changed, it shouldn't be voted on tonight and put that in the committee. Thank
No,
you.
that was my fault.
See in the back of the room, way back there. Please come forward and state your name.
Hello, my name is Zoe Armeo. Thank you for letting me be here today, members of the Select Board. Please forgive me as my voice shakes. I'm not used to public speaking, but I do hope that you, even though my voice may shake, that you pay attention to the message that remains steadfast. Both of my boys are born here in Vermont. I have had the pleasure of being a Brandon resident for the last 4 years, and I hope to continue that for the rest of my tenure living. I do not have the past of a history professor. I have not served in our U.S. military, but what I do hope is that I can bring a different perspective tonight. So my family are Polish immigrants. I myself am born in the U.S., but I am first generation. And for perspective for my family that came from Poland, my babcia, who is still alive today, she was 6 years old when Hitler died. I know that seems a little bit stark, but the reason I bring it up is because I want to remind us that history is not that far behind us. I think a lot of times we read it in textbooks and it seems very much removed. But in the case of my relatives who lived in both Nazi-occupied Germany and Nazi-occupied Poland and Russian-occupied Poland, their perspectives, I don't need to look in a history book to understand the actual reality of what they lived. Unfortunately, I wish I didn't have to say this, but what we are seeing today is what they were living. We are in it. I would like to say otherwise. I would like to say that we're afraid of what is going to happen, but we are in it. And it was a very, very real experience living for them. My mother growing up, when they were in their government issued condominiums that they had under communism, they were not allowed to speak ill of the government, their neighbors were not allowed to speak ill of even their, their town boards that they had. Due process, unfortunately, ceased to exist, and it did exist there. It can very quickly be taken away. There is a very real reason that both my mother and my babcha, my grandmother, are terrified, not only as green card holders, but thinking that they left that part of history in Poland just for it to come alive in the US. So even though it is a small part starting on a town level, but when we put when we put pen to paper and you guys sign resolutions like these it is a small step to show people in the town that are not afforded the opportunity to be here today out of fear. So we speak on behalf of them. Please, and if you look back and say, what did I do? Please let this be a moment. Please let these things, when you're looking at these resolutions, I beg of you, please let them be your moment of this is what I did. Because trust me, history will look kindly on you, but not only that, your townspeople will look kindly on you, and thank you. I very much appreciate the time. Again, thank you. And I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you
Thank
very
you, Zoe.
much.
My name is Beate Anke Jensen, and I am a resident of Brandon. And I had not planned on speaking tonight, but the young lady that spoke just before me kind of made me think about that I should share my little story. I'm a naturalized citizen. I became an American citizen in 1986, but I'm now approaching the very happy age of 65. So I called the Social Security office to sort of say, can we, talk about what's next? And they said, well, you need to come down and prove, and they said, are you an American citizen? I said, yes. And they said, well, you need to come down and prove that you're an American citizen. I'm like, okay. So I found my naturalization papers, and I have a passport. And I went down there and they said, well, you never contacted the Social Security office in 1986 and to tell us that you're an American citizen. I said, oh, well, I don't know. Maybe, my ex-husband was in the military, so I was a military spouse when this happened, when I became a citizen. So that made me realize that if I had been stopped by ICE, they could have taken me away, and without due process, I would not have been able to prove that I had that paper at home. I imagine that Doge had my records, access to my Social Security, check mark, not proven that she's an American citizen. So up until a few days ago, that mark was there that I'm not an American citizen. I could have been disappeared off the street. So this is personal. It can happen to people in our neighborhood, in our town, even though, it might not be the person that you think of. So let's make the right thing. Let's do this. Just make sure that your neighbors understand that you, the select board, and we, the citizens of Brandon, we got their back. Thank you.
Scanning the room for others. None seen. Yes, sir, on the end.
My name is Ken McFarland, and I live on Marble Street here in Brandon. And my remarks are very short. I just support everything that's been said and appreciate the comments that have been made and appreciate your service to this community and plead with you to approve this resolution. Thank you very much.
there's no more comments, I'm going to turn to the board.
So I actually have a question for the community. Has everyone read the resolution? Okay, just want to make sure everyone that there's no one in the room that's like, what are they talking about? So, okay. I want to thank Mr. Franzoni. Is Franzoni? I want to thank you for bringing this out to attention. I want to thank Sue Gage for stepping up as a Brandon resident to bring it to our attention. I agree with everyone that this is one of, stepping back a little, as a general rule, we as a select board try to stay out of like things that are not our sandbox, so to speak. In fact, as Mr. Hopkins reminded me the other day, we actually have a policy about staying in our sandbox and not addressing state or federal issues. That policy also can be waived. For me, this is very much on par with the Declaration of Inclusion that we as a select board adopted a few years ago. We recently adopted an amended version because the original version had left out references to socioeconomic groups. So, but this is very much for me on par with that, that we are simply stating what should be the obvious, that the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Vermont apply to everything we do. And those constitutions guarantee life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and due process. And due process is really what we're all talking about here. So, you know, we may disagree in terms of text. We may have questions about various parts of the resolution, but I think that at least for me, I do not see this as overstepping the select board's remit. I think this is something that, you know, we want to be on the right side of history. And there's a phrase that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And so what that means is we may not be getting exactly what we have in the past, but we can sometimes get something that, you know, sounds a lot like it. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah. First of all, everyone that's spoken tonight and came out tonight, thank you for coming. It's nice to see the room so full. I didn't sleep much last night. I was thinking about what I was going to say right now, and I still haven't decided. But the thoughts running through my head, Cecil sort of addressed. I haven't been on the select board very long, and this feels like a big swing. I agree wholeheartedly with the text of the resolution. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that's been said. I also have historically strongly felt that the select board should stay in its sandbox and that the state should stay in its sandbox and so on. But when I was thinking about what I might do here, I was thinking about one of my great mentors, a former boss of mine who's a state representative in Texas. And one of the things that he liked to say was, now is not a time for sheep, it is a time for shepherds. And I think in this moment, we have an opportunity to be shepherds. And so should we call a vote on it tonight? I intend to vote yes for this.
Others want to chime in?
Yeah, I'll say something. I'll second the thing that I believe everything that's said tonight is absolutely correct. I agree with everything. I think we should sign a resolution for the Constitution, but I think we should have some input on how it's written, not just go by somebody else's. I think we ought to write our own.
Don't say anything? Claire? Yep, get your hand up.
Good day for it.
Hi. It's wonderful. Claire Stone. I have a question about whether this was going to be see you later behind closed door votes, or one that you will do open and in public if this is voted on this evening. And my comment to you, my friend Ralph, is I don't know that it's worth reinventing the wheel in terms of what was read to us. Sounds pretty familiar to a person who's been to numerous schools and studied the Constitution and who does restorative justice. So we look at the law a lot and constitutional right. I think what was written was absolutely beautiful. I loved your comment, Jeff, about shepherds. We all need to be shepherds to one another when we have an opportunity to do that, because people are really stressed, people are scared, people are worrying about finances and food, and nobody knows what will happen tomorrow or the middle of the night. So I hope your vote will be open and with us. And I appreciate your service very much. And I appreciate this day of sunshine because it gives hope to
Okay.
all of us. Thank you.
If we end up with a motion, we will vote in lifetime. So it will not be behind closed doors. No.
I don't think it would be approved.
Right. But
Well, it would also be against the open meeting law. So you got that.
right. I would just chuck in, I've had numerous conversations on this today during the day. I didn't lose any sleep over it because I did not read it last night. So I didn't start till today. And I appreciate everything that was has been said today, and probably changed my opinions on this quite a bit. The term sandbox was one I was chucking around to a few of my board members today, one-on-one, when I would see them. And it's always been my feeling that we play in a small sandbox, which is Brandon, and we want to do things that are good for Brandon. We don't get involved in things that are all of the state. That's Governor Scott's turf. And we don't get involved in other things. And that's where I was just hours ago. But in meeting with or talking with Cecil earlier today, I was the lone person who suggested maybe a change to this document, which again, I may be changing my mind. My feeling was that the document has many bullet points that it talks about. And the second one really defines it down to being a anti, I don't want to say Trump. What else can I say? The current waters that we're in. But that's really, I guess, why we're here to do this, is because we have never been under pressure constitutionally like we are right now. So my initial thought was taking out the second whereas and just going, with this document saying, the United States Constitution guarantees due process. History has shown when we don't have that, things go wrong. And, down the line, and skipping the part about the current administration messing things up. But I guess the message, and the reason I was saying that is because once this administration is done and gone, we now have a document that kind of ties ourselves to that. And it would maybe be stronger as a long-term document, not mentioning him. But I think you've all changed my mind somewhat, because I know that's why we're here. And so if there's a motion from a board member, I will support it. And, I really, really try hard to keep state and federal politics out of this room. because I feel that we're very separate and needs to be. We need to stay in our own sandbox. But this is a case that things are a little bit amiss and people should not worry about being picked up, going down to the Social Security office and go out in handcuffs. That would be a bad thing. And yet I could see that could happen in today's environment. And so that's the end of my statement. I will just leave it to if someone wants to make a motion or an action or.
I move that the Select Board of Brandon adopt the resolution and a resolution condemning attacks on due process and affirming the constitutional rights of all people in Brandon. Whereas the United States Constitution guarantees due process, equal protection, and fundamental rights to all persons, regardless of citizenship, immigration status, race, religion, or political belief. And whereas recent actions by federal authorities, including the detention of legal residents in Vermont without clear justification or timely access to legal counsel, represents a escalation of government overreach and a violation of these constitutional protections. And whereas history has shown that when the rights of any group are violated, it opens the door for similar abuses to be carried out against others, first against immigrants, then against dissenters, and eventually against anyone who does not conform to the views of those in power. And whereas the social silence of public officials in the face of such abuses amounts to complicity, and failure to act now will only embolden those who seek to dismantle the rule of law and divide our communities through fear. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Select Board of the Town of Brandon unequivocally condemns all violations of due process and the weaponization of government power over any individuals. Be it further resolved that the Town of Brandon affirms its unwavering commitment to protecting the constitutional rights of all people in our city, regardless of citizenship status, national origin, political belief, or any other identity. Be it further resolved that the Brandon Select Board pledges to oppose any policy or action, local, state, or federal, that targets individuals based on who they are, where they come from, or what they believe, and to defend Brandon as a community rooted in justice, accountability, and the equal dignity of all.
Second.
That was a motion and a second. Further discussion from the board. Then we move the motion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes, not behind closed doors, in public.
What's that?
Now, you may stay and enjoy all the rest of our boring material, or if you would like to leave, you may.
Some
But
people may want to get a drink of water.
feel free to see what goes on here.
I've got a really stirring speech about Goshen Highway Departments for later.
Want to take a recess?
Yeah.
Okay, then we will take a 5-minute recess so that if people want to sneak out, they don't feel they're missing anything.
To approve.
So you guys ready? Is the recording back on? Okay, we are back in session and we're getting to our original item 3, reoccurring matters, which the first is the Select Board minutes from April 28th.
I will move to approve the minutes of our April 28th, 2025 meeting.
And I will second that motion.
Okay, any additions or corrections or changes? None heard. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no one. The warrant. Pay the bills.
Make a motion to approve the warrant.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the warrant in the amount of $152,943.89. Discussion or questions? All in favor of the warrant, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no one. Town managers report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, members of the public. I submitted my report in advance, but I I would like to read a number of parts from it for community awareness. So if you've not heard, the Sanderson Covered Bridge will be closed from 7:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. on weekdays at some point. It's not immediately closing tomorrow because the road's flooded. And the folks from Naylor and Breen who are doing the repair are obviously not able to get there. And I think they're waiting for one large beam still. But at some point in the very near future, the road's going to be closed for those 7 hours during weekdays to allow the crew to work safely. A second announcement is that there are no signs of any type, including temporary sandwich board signs, permitted in Central Park. It's a very complicated intersection. It's a very active place with pedestrians and cyclists and parents with strollers and cars that are unfamiliar with Brandon in many cases. More distractions there is not in the interest of public safety in terms of pedestrians or motorists. The ordinance requires that all temporary signs be approved by application to our code officer, Larry Stevens. I've discussed with Larry some potential other public spaces within the designated downtown that may be made available for temporary signs. But I would ask the community's cooperation in this. I know everybody feels that their organization does something wonderful and worthwhile for Brandon, and that is always the case, but that doesn't mean that you alone get to chain a sign to the lamp post at the crosswalk at Central Park. We need to just respect that that's not a good sign for a place for anybody to have a sign. I did send out the RFP for the restoration of the waterfall as noted in my report, and we have sent out a bid request for the replacement cruiser. We did not receive the grant for any Class 2 paving funds this year. The amount applied for from the towns greatly exceeded the amount available from VTrans to distribute. So they distribute on an equitable formula. Towns that had not recently received funding were awarded this year. Our town received a significant amount of funding, 6 figures, 2 years ago. We received a lesser amount of funding for North, so that was the Arnold District Road. Last year, we received a smaller amount of money for North Street. This year, we will not receive anything, but we will be in a better position next year. In light of that, I met with our Highway Division Chief, this is not in my report, Jeremy DeSorda, to talk about Class 3 roads that the Select Board might want to consider paving this year. And I just would share with you his 2 initial estimates are the Town Farm Road from basically where they stopped work just at the golf course north to the end of pavement is estimated at $160,000 for resurfacing. And Wheeler Road from the 2 bridges or the bridge culverts down at the end by Forestdale Road, again to the end of paving. In both cases, the end of paving is basically Richmond Road. Wheeler Road's a little bit longer. That's estimated at about $230,000. So I did also sit with Sue Gage. Did she go home? Yeah. So I sat with Sue. We reviewed the 1% local option tax account together to find out what is available that's not been spoken for and what has been spoken for. In my report, I mentioned that we received the quarterly distribution of $66,720.54. So including that, the balance in the local option, do not get excited about this number. The balance in the local option tax is approximately $487,000. Now, the board did commit to making the annual payments for the replacement highway truck from that fund. So you need to kind of think about $25,000 a year for the next 4 years. And Union Street is supposed to come out of that. So Mr. Moore and I had a meeting with the folks from VTrans about the Union Street grant, and he's got some report that he'll share with you about information that was found out there. In terms of delinquent tax collection, since July 1st, 2024, so for this fiscal year so far, the town has collected delinquent taxes, penalties, and interest amounting to $163,123.90. Since the attorney's letter was sent out on April 3rd, we've had the largest month of collections, $33,843. And I spoke with Jackie today at the end of the day. The number of properties initially sent to the attorneys for tax sale was 74. And through a combination of people entirely paying off their delinquency or people paying something and starting a payment plan to clear their delinquency in a year, the number of accounts to be sent to tax sale today is down from 74 to 33. So that's a substantial help to the town, and it's also very good news for those members of the community who might otherwise have been looking at a tax sale. Brief kudos to Sue Gage for being named to the 2025 Municipal Clerk's Honor Roll in recognition of her expertise. Also to Jim Leary for coordinating a successful Green Up Day since the last select board. I had a good time with Mr. Bailey riding around in his really luxurious truck and picking up green bags. So thank you to Jim Leary for many years of spearheading Green Up Day. And Chief Kachajian has extended an employment offer, which has been accepted for the temporary part-time position at the police station as dispatcher administrative officer. So Emily Taylor is joining us, and we welcome Emily. Bill and I met her on Thursday, I think, last week. And she grew up in Brandon, so she knows the community well, and we look forward to her being part of the efforts of the town's professional staff. And lastly, this is two updates. Actually, I'm glad I turned the page here. I did leave for the select board on your desks this evening the evaluation of the 2016 police SUV that Jared Lowell spoke about at the previous meeting, and he has given further information regarding the condition of that cruiser. I would like the select board, as a kind of an old business matter, to consider either taking this up tonight or in a pretty near future meeting to let me know whether you would like me to retain this, given the work that's required or will be required for it in the near future, or whether you would authorize me to auction this off. And the last announcement I have is news that came in to me today, which is that Tana Romano has resigned as a trustee of public funds. And so there's a vacancy on the trustees of public funds. His term was to expire March, so town meeting of 2026, next year. So my suggestion to the board, and this could not be warned because the news came to me today, but my suggestion to the board is that we're announcing that there's a vacancy. I would recommend that a letter of interest and a cover letter would be due to me by not this Thursday, but next Thursday, which will allow it to be put into the board packet, and that the Monday following that, you would anticipate interviewing the potential candidates and potentially making an appointment. And that's my report.
Thank you for your report. Questions of Mr. Hopkins from the board?
What additional work is needed on the? No.
Yeah. So he describes an exhaust problem at the first thing, which is about $2,000. A small problem of a mirror that would have to be replaced before an inspection is done. Next time is due for an inspection sticker. And then the third point is the rocker panels, which he alluded to in his in-person comments to the board last time at $2,500. So I think essentially you're talking about $4,600 as an estimate to keep this in service.
And do we know what? Is this one of those things where the cost of repair is greater than the current value of the vehicle?
I would tend to think so because of it's 10 years old, its mileage, its condition.
My feeling on the car is that we should, I'm not sure it's the safest vehicle to put police officers in that are driving to, at a high rate of speed, not in car chases, but just to get to a call, et cetera. So I still think that seeing as though it's not needed at this point, it would be a smart time to liquidate it.
It is currently inspected.
Do we have a rough estimate on when the new one would be here?
So we sent out the bid asking for bid proposals later in May and saying that we would like delivery 1st of July. Some of those will be, some of those bids that are going to come in are going to be, it's ready to be put into service, like it's going to have the lights and so forth.
Yep.
Others of those vehicles are going to come in and maybe need upfitting. And I've spoken with a couple of upfitters, one in Vermont and one in Glens Falls. And they indicated maybe on the order of 6 weeks would be their lead time from that. So I think in any case, we should be safely in shape by Labor Day.
Okay. I would recommend we sell this vehicle right around that time frame. And when that new one comes in, just before, or right after, just in case we need it.
Kind of keep it mothballed for now and be able to use it.
Okay, so you'd like to wait until that point?
I would like to see us sell it just before, right then, just in case something happens in the one we have on the road now, where we need it.
That suffice to you, Mr. Hopkins?
Sure.
Okay. As far as the paving goes, I know we had stated that we wanted to spend about $100,000 from our local options tax. My other question would be for the next select board meeting, possibly if we could get an update point with the tax money coming in as it is, where is our cash reserve at? So we can look at if we're, if our reserve gets above our 15% number, we could use some reserve with the 1% money and get one of these 2 roads done. I would rather see us do one of the roads from start to finish. I've never liked where we do part of a road and we stop and then 2 years later, we're doing another part of it and yet the road never seems to be totally done. So, you know, it would seem like our cash reserve should be good enough that we could possibly do either one of these roads in entirety. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Can you get those numbers to us at the next meeting?
Right. So you know that every report, I give you that little financial snapshot, and you may have noted that the fund balance doesn't change particularly between meeting to meeting. So there is some accounting that has to get done, and the bookkeeper and the town treasurer do it on a periodic basis together. And I will ask them to do a little catch-up one to take into account the fairly large volume of tax payments that have come
Number
in.
we're at when we're at 15%. With our cash reserve.
500,000.
500,000. That's the top number we can get to.
Oh, sorry. 15 is the low number.
15.
You have to keep 15. You have to keep 500,000, which is 15% to stay in the policy.
Yep.
And then if you're at $1 million, you're at 30%, which is the top of the policy.
Okay. I guess it would be interesting to see where we may fall at the end of this.
Yeah.
This year. So
yeah.
I mean,
I will say, you know,
definitely got to do a paving job.
We absolutely should do a paving job. I believe that it's going to be important for us to try to get this information to you pretty expeditiously so that we can go out to bid before, you know, late summer and maybe risk not being able to get in line.
Okay. Any other questions for the town manager from the board?
Quick one.
Yeah.
I don't think you highlighted it, but I know in your report you mentioned they're starting the slate on this building today or this week.
Yes.
So
So they've armored the utility wires. I don't know if you saw the plastic sheaths have been put over those. He expects late this week, weather permitting, to start some staging and so forth.
are they expecting any implications for pedestrians or traffic?
So this lower entrance under the porch down here will remain open all the time. They're actually going to extend the porch toward Route 7 scaffolding wise so that when they're working right at the end of it, there's no risk to pedestrians. So we might not be in a great position to use the front door from time to time. I have spoken with Bernie and Pat about the chamber auction moving in and, you know, coordinating that. And there was another kind of significant use of the hall that was, you want to talk about?
I mean, you're talking about the summer concert series?
Yes, the Wednesday rain location.
So the town hall, Bill Moore, AI, the
Quite bad about that.
the summer concert series that's been going on. This will be year 10 since its reboot in 2016. Started out at the gazebo and is now at the Riverbend. We've decided that we're going to make available the town hall as the rain location, so we never have to cancel them again. And so that could impact that. But again, like there's always going to be access to the building through the lower entrance that we use during the wintertime. We often close the front steps in the winter. Just between us, we close it not because it's dangerous, because it lets all the heat out. So if we let you go up through this way, we keep some of the heat upstairs. So again, using it in that regard won't be as disruptive. They did also talk about the fact that often the 2 parking spaces that are adjacent to the town hall right here will be inaccessible during the midweek when they're, moving in and out of there with Slate and their 28,000-pound machine.
Okay. No other questions from the public? Yes. Public. Go ahead, Brett. I saw your hand first and then.
Yes, Brent Bueller. Seth, isn't it about time we had a warning system on Sanderson?
It is. And so I have not spoken with, I've corresponded with the state wetlands ecologist to see about the possibility of making a broader turnaround on the town side, so that what happened most recently with the truck getting stuck when the driver realized that he was not going to clear the bridge, he attempted to turn around, which was the right thing to do, but we didn't have enough room there. I've worked with her. I've got to work with Jeremy now and Chief Kachajian and see about that. And we've gone back and forth between lights and stuff, or like a telephone pole, holding a telephone pole that swings. And it's going to depend on the insurance company blessing something like that, which, they blessed. We use the same insurance company, I believe, I'm almost certain, that they use in St. Johnsbury, where they just erected that some beams in front of a covered bridge up there to do the same thing. So I'm assuming there's a way to make this happen, but I don't have a final yes from them. And then we'll just see what we can do in-house, or whether we have to bid it out as a job.
Great. Thank you. I also want to thank you for your presentation to the trustees last week. I thought it was brilliant and to the point. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah, it's in the back.
Sanderson Bridge. Okay.
Clara Stone again. Just a question in thinking about Wheeler Road and Town Farm Road. Those are beautiful places to bike. People drive really fast, even on the dirt road. And many neighbors that I have met out there in my biking life complain a lot about traffic and how fast it goes. So I'm wondering, once it's paved, I could foresee people actually leaving the ground over some of those hills that are out there. So I'm wondering if that's going to be something to take into consideration when the paving happens. A lot of times speed bumps are put in, probably break a couple of truck axles, but I'm just concerned that people are driving out of control, and that it's going to be way more fun paved to go fast.
We can let the experts answer, but what I can tell you is there was one proposed once in another spot in town. And from our road crew, the problem is snowplows hit that same speed bump and do severe damage to their plow truck. So I'm not sure, we make the road smooth, they drive faster. We let the roads be rough. Everybody drives on a rough road. I'm not sure what the answer is. I don't know.
Just bringing it up to think about, because people are really bent out of shape about how fast people are driving back there. And then you get a couple of trucks coming. I won't mind not having dust, but
so just Claire, to be clear, we're not paving anything that's unpaved right now. We're talking about topping the poor condition asphalt.
I thought you were going to finish.
No, to the end of pavement, which in both of these roads is Richmond.
We're all potholes aren't going.
All right.
That stuff fast.
Glad we get that straight out.
Thank you, Seth. That was the clarification I was going to ask for.
Your turn, Karen.
Siri, my name's Karen Rhodes. I met earlier in last week with two ladies, Faith Daya and Janie Young. And we just received information that Tanner has resigned from the trustees of public funds. But we got together and we prepared a document for you guys to review. When it comes to trustees of public funds, there's questions for you and some suggestions as well as to how you might want to. Instead of taking up all this time for a 3-page document and reading everything, I'd like you to take these documents with you and read them at your leisure and report back to the citizens that have questions.
You can leave
with
that.
answers.
Good.
No, this is.
Karen, is this for Seth or is this a public comment for the board?
Oh. If anyone else wants a copy, feel free to email me at my home address. It's all lowercase KJMC2@comcast.net. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, unless there's another question for the town manager on his report. There is none. Moving on, community development report, Bill Moore.
Thank you, Doug. This is my community development report for today, the 12th. Summer program is heating up with some new and not new offerings. Summer softball will be offered again this year with a 7-week season that starts in June. Girls entering grades 7 through 9 will play home games at Otter Valley. This is a partnership with the Pittsburgh Rec. Thanks to another partnership, a weekly summer wrestling clinic featuring instructors from the nationally ranked Vermont State University Castleton's program will be on tap at Otter Valley. This is a partnership with the Parents of Wrestling Booster Club. It starts on June the 17th. An outdoor camp with the adventurer photographer Josh Hummel is a first-year offering being held at Estabrook Park, July 28th through August 1st. Still to be announced, working on our Lego robotics, our Branbury Arts camps, basketball camp, and football camp. In adult news, the Brandon, Vermont Co-ed Softball League started their league schedule on May 11th. 8 teams of adults will be playing at Estabrook Park on Sundays through August the 24th. This past week was their first week. For those that are relatively new to Brandon, years ago there used to be softball there. The league moved up to Addison County. They've since come back this way with a really Brandon-based wonderful young person that's running the league to ensure that the park rules are followed, specifically around public intoxication. So, which tends to go hand in hand with adult softball. But this young gentleman's really on top of it. It's weird. I mean, I just don't understand playing sports but anyways, but everything went really well. And again, like we're going to be monitoring that. If there's any issues, we'll stay on top of that, but we're excited to have adults using that field. Also keeps down the grass, in the infield for us. And they've been great about working on the field. On May 25th, in partnership with the Brandon Museum at the Stephen A. Douglas Birthplace, we'll host a free showing of Death in the Wilderness, A Love Story, with a question and answer session with filmmaker, historian, professor Dr. Kevin Thornton. Brandon's beautiful Flower Girl ceremony began at least as early as 1902 and has been unbroken annual tradition since. The history of the Flower Girl tradition is told in this award-winning documentary. That's at 6:30 on the 25th. And oh, by the way, on the 26th is Memorial Day when we actually have the ceremony in the parade, which will be this year going down Park Street and ending at the park. So I implore you to go and take a look at this. This is a very awesome thing that Brandon does. The folks at Ex Mortis Management had to cancel their May 31st metal concert, but Red Clover Ale Company will be sponsoring Central New York outfit Randy Mitriello in the Hop City Hellcats. They're an Americana, bluegrass, honky-tonk, cosmic country act with excellent songwriting, killer instrumentation, and an energetic drive. Suggested donation of $10 at the door to benefit the town hall. The doors open at 6:30. With regard to the, I didn't put this in my written report, Seth and I had a productive meeting with VTrans, and we learned something. As somebody, as somebody who came on as municipal project manager, with the resignation of the former town manager, jumping into this, and we've discovered, and we've been operating under the assumption that our match for Union Street at the time, it's good, sort of a good news, bad news thing. It was going to be a $700,000 project at the time when it was proposed in 2021, and that we'd have a 50-50 match on this grant. However, I think it's not going to be 700,000 anymore. It's going to be considerably more. And our grant only is for 300,000, but we found out that it is an 80-20 match, not a 50-50 match. So we have a little more money available in the 1% fund. And even if this were to go out to the projected 925,000, we have an opportunity to apply for more grants at an 80-20 match, and that our match, even if it was $1 million, would be $200,000, not 300 or 350,000, as we've been bantied about for the last couple of years. So
We still have to apply and secure.
Correct.
but we've gotten through NEPA, which is the biggest thing. Our next hurdle is getting the easements from all the folks on Union Street. And then again, applying for more grant money to cover the expanding cost of the sidewalk stormwater project.
Questions of Mr. Moore from the board? Nope. Questions for Mr. Moore on his report from the public? Ooh, two hands. You haven't spoken yet, sir, so you get to go first.
Yeah. I'm Matt Craig. I live on Union Street, so that's concerning my question and a couple of comments. What exactly does the Union Street project consist of? You mentioned sidewalks, but I'm just curious.
So it'd be sidewalk replacement from the top of where segment 6 ended, which is right about where Hannaford's is. You'll see the new cement sidewalk on the south side of the street. That's where the project ended. From that down to the railroad tracks. We'll be replacing the sidewalks on either side, reconstruction, replacement of the sidewalks, and connection of the storm water system to.
So on the west side of the
and Granite Corbs, both sides of the street.
So on the Hannaford side of the street. Okay.
Hannaford, and both sides of the street, all the way down, both sides of the sidewalk will be replaced.
Okay, great. So that's what the grant is for, to replace those?
Yes, that and the stormwater mitigation.
Okay, so two suggestions, kind of related. One is related to the comment about the speeding, which is really bad on Union Street as well. I would urge the board to consider some kind of reminder to people of how fast they're going. One of those, I don't know how much they cost, but the things that have a little radar with them and it tells you how fast they're going. If you could add a little camera to that to then take to our police force, which has been reduced significantly recently, without police to monitor, if it could go directly to the police, then there would be a photographic evidence of how fast people are going. That would be great. The other thing would be in terms of the sidewalk. Brandon is a relatively walkable town currently. If you are in the center, Park Street is great to walk on. You can take a sidewalk that dead ends going north on 7. I would suggest a loop that would continue what you have proposed with a great sidewalk. It currently goes down to the bottom of the hill on the east side of the street, ending roughly at the Dennis property. My side of the street, which is the other side, the west side of the street, down to the river. If we were to create a walking path, and it wouldn't necessarily have to be paved, that would go down Union Street to Maple Street, come around, we'd have a nice loop there. I think that would be of benefit to the entire community. That's all I've got.
Thank you. And I think Brent had his hand up. Did you, Brent?
Yeah, Brent Bueller. Do we know how many participants there were in the Witches Walk on Park Street?
I believe there was 20.
20 participants. Okay.
I was not there, but I just from reports and
Okay. Thank you.
20 and it rained
And it rained
Hard.
hard.
and then I do agree with what Matt said. And is it possible, can you put speed bumps in on streets? Are they allowed here? Because we have the problem on Carver, we have the problem on Union, we have the problem on Church. I mean, everywhere there's the problem. It doesn't matter what the signs tell people. They just don't slow down. So speed bumps. Okay.
Okay, moving on. Adopt Emergency Management Director of Mr. Hopkins, Coordinator Jeff Haylon. You need to talk about that, Seth, or we just need to approve it?
Happy to answer any question. Have I completed a 5-hour course with Tim Giles about emergency management, and so I'm a certified Vermont Emergency Management Director. Tim's a certified Vermont Emergency Management Coordinator. He's finishing the term and doesn't wish to be reappointed. And I spoke with Jeff Haylon, and he is willing to take on the education and the role. And I'm excited to have some refreshed direction in that, because there was a task I didn't get accomplished that I wanted to get accomplished in preparedness.
I'd like to make that motion.
I'll make that motion to appoint those two individuals.
Jeff and Seth,
I'll second it.
motion in a second. Any discussion? None heard. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm recusing myself from that.
But you're there. Thank you
Happy to.
very much for stepping in.
Happy to.
Item 7, Emergency Management Plan Update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have the required part of the update in the meeting packet. At this point, it's a fairly light process to update the emergency management plan for Brandon. We did do a cover-to-cover revision of it maybe 3 years ago. So probably every 5th year, it ought to have like a really thorough treatment. But the in-between years are just to make sure that you have the right contact information for elected officials who may have changed, appointed officials, department heads, things of that nature. And that's what is before you tonight to renew. It's a condition of a lot of the town's state reimbursement for public works grants and highway and so forth.
Pleasure of the board.
I move that we readopt the local emergency management plan as required by state law.
Second.
Motion in a second. Discussion unneeded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. They're set. Item 8, proposed town highway service contract with Goshen. I believe, Seth, that's all yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was an arrangement requested by the Goshen Road Foreman and the Goshen Selectboard Chair. It came to me through their outreach to our Highway Division Chief. And after the initial discussion that they had, Jeremy brought the proposal to me. He and I weighed some pros and cons. Obviously, our staffing situation is not optimal. The amount of service that Goshen is requesting be done by Brandon staff using Brandon equipment is limited, and it's specified in the contract. It's further specified in the contract that if no satisfactory agreement as to scheduling can be reached, the work in question will not get done. So I believe that that's preserving Brandon's primacy for its equipment and its staff time. I did run it by the insurance company, obviously, and they signed off in writing stating that we have sufficient liability and workers' comp coverage for the exposure and that no extra coverage is needed to perform the work in the town of Goshen. They had some further recommendations, which we incorporated into the draft that you see before you. This kind of agreement is authorized by state law. It's called an interlocal contract. And in the resolution portion of it, I've given you the citation for what allows you to do this if you want to. And I would just point out that this is a 1-year contract that's renewable for 1-year terms and successive 1-year terms, at which time Any adjustments would be made to the equipment rate or the labor rates. Jeremy is confident that this will not compromise the town's ability to perform highway services in the town of Brandon. You have the chart on the back. It's for the benefit of the public. Goshen is asking us to do one street sweeping in the spring on their paved roads, which, if you know Goshen, are fairly limited. It's Town Hill right up to Camp Thorpe. They're asking us to do one roadside mowing of their roads in the summertime. And they're asking for a dirt road grading. This is the bulk of the contract, a dirt road grading in the spring, summer, and the fall. So 3 doses of dirt road grading. Our grader is, it is kind of like the top of the line grader, and it has a lot of features, and they're very good at using it, our town crew. And the grader in Goshen it's aged, and it's not as easy to use, and it's not as effective to use. So their highway staff, it's kind of like what we're doing, right? Our highway staff has pivoted from reconstructing portions of roads to maintaining roads, and we're going to go out to bid to reconstruct roads when we need to. Goshen's decided that they could contract out the grading and free up, I believe they have just the one employee in the highway department, and it would free that individual up. They have a lot of drainage stuff going on the same way Brandon has a lot of drainage stuff going on, and they will focus on stuff that they feel they can do with their staff and their equipment best. And Brandon's equipment is really well suited to taking care of these jobs that they're asking us to do for them.
I had a question about, so during those periods when a Brandon Town employee is working in Goshen,
right,
will their schedule for that period be adjusted so that they aren't incurring overtime?
Oh, yeah.
How is that?
Good question. So this is intended to be an assignment of a portion of their work week. So they work 40-hour weeks, and they would still work 40-hour weeks. During the time that they're doing grading, for instance, it would be the case that we're on 10-hour days, 4 10-hour days right now. That individual with the grader would be out of town doing the grading for 2.5 days in this scenario.
Okay.
I would just say, I think Jeremy's run a really tight ship over at Highway. If he has faith that this works and brings us a little bit of revenue, I see no reason to doubt him.
So essentially, it's a wash on paying money, right? Because we're still paying staff time, but Goshen's reimbursing us staff time. Where Brandon gets a benefit is Goshen's also making a contribution to the benefits that would accrue regardless of how many hours or where the staff person worked. And Goshen is also basically paying equipment time, which normally that piece of equipment would be idle and there would be no revenue associated with it when it's not being used. I think it's worth at least a pilot year. I really do.
Pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the service contract with Goshen.
I'll second that.
Any additional discussion? None
Excuse me.
heard.
Excuse me.
Someone
Oh,
online.
Neil.
My hand's been
Neil.
up. While the town of Goshen is using the Brandon equipment and Brandon employee, is it Goshen's insurance or Brandon's insurance that will cover any mishaps?
It's our insurance, and our insurance policy, our insurance company has stated that our insurance is sufficient for this. There will be no Goshen employees using Brandon equipment, just Brandon employees using Brandon equipment. And they have stated in writing, no extra coverage is needed to perform the work in the town of Goshen.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of giving this a whirl for the first year, say aye.
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 Opposed, no one. You'll take care of all that.
The Goshen board meets tonight too. they've always met the same night as the Brandon board. And so they're considering the same version. And we wrote into the contract that if you sign tonight and they sign tonight, it can start immediately. We don't have to wait for everybody to sign the same paper. We'll combine them into one contract.
Item 9, approved participation in FY 26 grants in aid from Municipal Roads and General Permit.
So this is something we've done successfully for the past few years. The state has got a really powerful technology that divides the town's roads into very short segments, and it tells which roads are well drained, which roads are poorly drained, which roads have structures that need to be inventoried. And basically, this is how they assist us in getting all of our roads up to the standard. Their goal is to make sure that we're not contributing unduly to the pollution in Lake Champlain is what this is all about. This is about hydrologically connected segments of roads. And as I say, we've used it successfully for a couple, 3 years. The town's match is in kind, which means it's equipment, materials, and staff time, not any cash layout. And then there's a reimbursement coming from the state for the part that they're funding. So it's an 80-20 match.
Pleasure of the board. We've been doing this for at least 3 years.
At least 3, yeah. It's been successful.
Seems like a no-brainer to keep doing it.
I move that we approve the letter of intent.
Second. Okay. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh. We already did 10. So we are now up to item 11. Reason you all come. Public comment and participation for items that are not on the agenda.
I have a piece of news which may be of interest to the public, probably of interest to the board. The trustees of public funds inquired about using the town's attorney to get a reading of the will, basically to make sure that it's being administered as it needs to be. I did communicate with the town's attorney because I was concerned that the town might need the town's attorney at some point about this trust, and I didn't want a conflict of interest or representation to occur. He concurs that a conflict would occur if the trustees used the same attorney that the town uses. So we're reserving the town's attorney to represent the town in this case, should it come necessary. And I've sent a note to the trustees advising that he recommends that they seek independent counsel.
Okay. Other comments? Brett Bueller is first hand up. One more time.
Yeah. Sorry.
You were in a path right up there. That's okay.
I'm still going to chew on that dog bone regarding the trustees. As Seth just said, it appears that they don't agree with Seth's assessment that he presented to them at the thing. So now they're going to cost the town more money for attorneys, and they're going to use trust money for attorneys, and they're going to continue this debacle. We all grew up with the premise that 2 wrongs don't make a right. And they seem to not agree with that. We were also told as children, if so-and-so jumped off a cliff, would you? And apparently they do want to, because historically they want to justify their actions by other trustees, and they're going to jump off the cliff in doing this. So I hope that since they're doing this, you all will institute your right under Article 3 of the Conflict of Interest and ask them to appear before you to answer the questions. And if they continue with this line of theirs, then you go to Article 4 and ask for their resignations. Now, Tanner's already resigned. Have you all read his resignation? Are you aware of his resignation?
Yes.
Yes, you have read it. So have I. To suggest that they, raise $300,000 of this fund, we all have, or some of us have stock portfolios. I'm not a day trader, and neither are they. they didn't do that. The stock market goes up, it goes down. They also suggest that their limit was 30,000 a year. Last year they did 71,000 out of the fund. So there's just a lot of BS in the resignation, in my opinion. And then in questioning the VCC and the money that was given $10,000 for a feasibility study, now in his resignation, he says it was used for architectural services and bonding counsel. That is not feasibility study. And the funds were given to the OVAA and then diverted to the VCC. There's just no accountability for this. I also requested that the trustees put back on their agenda for this Thursday. By the way, there's a meeting Thursday, you all probably know, at 5:30 here. And I requested that they put back on the town's request for $20,000 for the automatic water sampling at the sewage. And they would not do it. They told me I could bring it up, which to me is inappropriate as well. Agendas are changed and added all the time. You folks just made item 10 number 2.5 tonight. So they're just not responsive. They apparently want to fight this to the end. In his resignation, he said that you, Cecil, and Jeff were going to clear their names. I don't know what that means. I'm not privy to your conversations with him, and I don't know why he would say that, except he's under the impression you're going to clear his name. Or all the trustees for that matter. So if they want to battle, I hope you folks will support Seth in getting this under control so that these funds are used for what they were meant to be used for, which is sewer and sanitation. So I think that's it. Thank you. Oh, if the sewer treatment plant doesn't have a name, I suggest we name it the Shirley Farr Treatment Center.
So, thank you, Brent. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to make really clear that the town's conflict of interest policy does not apply to the trustees of public funds interpretation of the Shirley Farr will. Whether their decisions based on that fit with their fiduciary duty as trustees to interpret the will may be a question, but that is not covered by the town's conflict of interest policy. So we're kind of talking two different things there. And I know there's a lot of concern about payments that the trustees have made and decisions that they have made, and those could possibly be issues to be raised with the trustees, but they're not technically conflicts of interest. And one possibility that the town could follow, and I don't know if Mr. Hopkins has discussed this with the town attorney, but there is the option of seeking what's called a declaratory judgment. And those are usually for contracts. They're usually when people have disputes over contracts that as to whose responsibilities are what, they can seek a declaratory judgment from the court. It's not technically a lawsuit, but it is a binding decision. I don't know if that is something that should be discussed, needs to be discussed. It certainly wasn't warned for tonight. And so I'm just laying that out there because it is something that Mr. Romano mentioned in his letter.
I see the hand that's further over there.
Seth first.
Oh, that's hands first. I'm sorry.
I don't want to
Make it very
contradict.
clear.
I don't want to contradict anything that's been said. I just do want to clarify that I'm not speaking for the trustees about their position in regards to how the trust is to be used. I'm just saying that I'm trying to prevent, and I think we have now prevented, a conflict of representation if they were to turn to the town attorney. When the trustees go to an independent attorney. I have no idea what that attorney is going to tell them is their position. I have no idea whether the trustees are going to take the guidance of that attorney or whatever. It is my hope. I had a conversation with a Brandon taxpayer today who I respect very much about this on the telephone. And she and I were talking about how foolish it would be if the Brandon taxpayers' money were spent to fight in court the Brandon trust revenue that could be used to benefit the community of Brandon, right? I don't think it's my desire or anyone's desire to fritter away money, public money, that people are required to pay the town or will sell your damn house in terms of fighting the trustees about this. So we're trying to avoid that. I don't know what position they're going to take. I hope that a second look at it by an independent counsel might bring them closer to the town's position that the town is the beneficiary of the trust. The town is the owner of the trust.
Okay, thank you for clarification. Now clear.
Still here. So this matter is extremely important to me and to many people in this community. I think there was this is my personal opinion, a big charade with the $12 million community center. We don't seem to be able to find any of those athletic people, which was a question I had asked them. Who are those people over at the school where money keeps floating in and out? And I think we were given some really amazing information about trust and the Attorney General's office. And I personally don't have a problem with taking it there because I really do think enough is enough. We should not be in a battle over the money left for this town. Apparently, the town can't make a request that it can get. And that seems absolutely bizarre to me, since it's been left to the town, very clearly specified what those needs were. I understand that there may have been another payout for another little house for electric equipment from the Energy Committee. I'm not sure why they can't sell T-shirts or build one themselves. I don't understand why Solar Fest got $20,000 for a pathway through the swamp to go back to Solar Fest when they have almost $400,000. Why are we paying for that? That benefits Solar Fest, not the people of Brandon. So I just feel that it doesn't take a rocket scientist or an attorney to see how this money has been distributed. The school already has a $28 million budget, and they're getting lights for this and playground equipment and athletic stuff. We already pay for that. Why are we giving more money? You can't just keep giving away money when it isn't actually what that money was intended for. And I personally want this battle to go to its rightful end and people are held accountable. I think that's really important. I'm very glad that Tanner has retired, right? He hasn't retired. Sorry about that. That he has resigned. I think it was appropriate. The fact that they would even ask to use our attorney or to even be able to touch that money to cover their behinds is spectacularly out of line. I don't see how that could even come to fruition. Is that a possibility that they can dip in Shirley Barr's money to pay for their attorney?
I think that would be a customary use of trust revenue would be to pay the legal expenses of the trustees regarding the trust.
Well, how nice. Spend it as you like it, and now we're going to give you money to pay for your attorney. That seems like really messed up. And we dropped the ball in this town about that money.
And I don't think that's going to happen again. And I thank Brent and all the other people behind the scenes that have been on top of this. Vicky DeSorda paying attention, reading and researching, looking at minutes from board meetings. We couldn't even find out where they were. And then the last meeting was at 8:30 on a Thursday morning, as it was pointed out where most people were. So I just think that we need to stand on principle and not just look at money and not getting into a battle. This is 3 citizens in this town who really are not doing their job. They do not have our trust anymore for most of us, I believe. Can't speak for everybody, but the people that know about it are pretty upset. And I don't think we should roll over. And I don't think after just backing up the Constitution, that we should be afraid to do the right thing.
Thank you. Other comments or participation? Vicky, did you put your hand up?
Well, Brent's spoken
Brent's been there
several
enough times.
times.
You get to go first. Then we'll get to Brent again. He doesn't want you to get there. He'll just trip you on the way up. Don't worry.
Well, Vicky DeSorda, I have concerns. I know you're going to go into executive session. I've expressed my concerns to the town manager. First of all, the resignation letter and the last sentence of the resignation letter, Cecil, it would be my sincerest hope that you and Jeff make true on your commitment to clear my name as well as Laura's publicly. I'm concerned about promises made from that statement. It appears, the ethics violation hasn't even, to my knowledge, been resolved. And it seems like board members are making promises. I don't expect you to respond. I hope you take what I say in consideration into executive session tonight. I have concerns about your relationship with one of the trustees as members of trustees of the public library. And also, I just want to say that there was a boundary line adjustment not long ago on February 10th. And it mentioned 2 parcels by number, but only 1 by name. And the second parcel belonged to Workforce Housing LLC, which is, I believe, registered to, again, a member of the trustees. So I just want to remind you all of our Vermont Constitution, Article 7, which states, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, just enough so you get the gist of where I'm going. I'll be happy to share it. It's available online. That government is or ought to be instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the people, nation, or community, and not for the particular emolument or advantage of any single person. So please take that into consideration in your deliberations this evening. Thank you.
I actually can respond and would like to respond. No promises were made in the conversations that Jeff and I had while investigating the ethics complaint. We interviewed both Mr. Romano and Ms. Miner in order to flesh out the facts and get some details. I can't control what Mr. Romano may say or think, but I can tell you that no promises of any sort were made. What I did say to him was, depending on how our investigation turned out, we would write a report, and in that report, we would say what our findings were. He obviously would like those findings to be in his favor. But
Yeah, I would just say I was also shocked and concerned to see that postscript in that resignation letter. I think everyone should have been. That was the rational response, was to be shocked and concerned. And I would back Cecil up. Absolutely no commitments of any kind were made about the results, whatever they may be.
And I'd like to quickly reply to your question about the boundary line thing. There was no.
for the Humane Society?
That was a boundary line, that error that in the town records, we did not change the boundary lines at all of the company in question. We just stated that the piece of property that was in error and still under the name of the town went with the property that the Humane Society got. It did not, and it just opened it up to, they came over and touched on their property, but there was no movement.
So I would love to speak to this more. So those are maps that I drew. I'll give you the long and short of it. First of all, there's no massive conspiracy. I want to make sure you understand that wholeheartedly. No massive conspiracy to enrich Tanner Romano. The Humane Society approached us about approached the town talking about buying the Ultravation building. Mimi Brown, who worked for Act 250 for years and years and years, and their due diligence in looking at the property, discovered that there was a chunk of land that had somehow been incorporated with the possibility of the town creating a circle down around there, that since the property was divided up by the state in around 1993, 1994, that was thought to be the town's, but was taken care of by Ultravation since that time. At the point at which Mimi talked about this, we said, we have no plans to do anything with that piece of property that's been taken care of by them since the properties were divided up. And it had a little bump that went into what was the Compass Music and Arts Center. And I asked Mimi, would it be okay if we straightened that line out to provide that, so it wasn't more a bump anymore, and would be this round circle that would go into the property adjoining them. That is how that happened. There was no enrichment. There was no opportunity to make this some sort of payout for Tanner. And the idea that you think that level of conspiracy exists is absurd.
Actually, Bill, the whole reason that I know that this property involved the workforce housing was from your original presentation on December 9th, when you did mention the bump and Tanner Romano. But this is just a friendly reminder of, this is really a house of cards. You guys know everything is built on trust, and you're only as strong as your weakest member. And right now, even though you're two separate entities, your weakest member is the trustees of public funds. So now everybody will be called into question. And so I just, holding one another accountable as far as transparency, conflicts of interest, I think is essential for all of you and for all of us, so that we have confidence, because this is not fun for me. Researching board minutes night after night, trying to put the pieces together, and then working them in with the select board. This is not what I would like to be doing with my time. I would like to trust, as I used to, that everything is on the up and up. And so hopefully this is a valuable learning experience for everyone. And I know it's just a bump, that it's a tiny piece of land for him, and I have no problem with the half acre going to Humane Society. But again, it's really perception, So hopefully you'll just really give it an honest look at this whole issue, because, obviously members of the public are upset about everything that's transpired. So hopefully, you will set us egos aside and just try to do your best to do the right thing.
I would like to just chime in and just say that the Brandon Select Board forever has had zero input on the trustees of public funds, that they're separate elected individuals who answer to the voters. The only reason the select board even got involved at this point was the ethics complaint, which the select board is the basically judge and jury of, to where complaints go to. But we cannot tell them what to do or whatever. They are elected officials. This is my own personal interpretation. So they have never been advised by the town what to do in the past. We're trying to move forward and assist them, and Mr. Hopkins' advice to them, that it's town funds, is all trying to work for them to end up being independent again, I believe, and that it's under Vermont law, if there's a chunk of money given to a town, then there must be trustees to oversee that. And again, it's not normally the select board. So they're two separate entities. I can't wait for us to be out of it.
Well,
I think that's, where it has to come from, whether there are new trustees elected. When you say we've all been asleep at the switch on this, maybe we all have as citizens, because we're the ones that have elected them and not gone to meetings or paid attention until just recently. So it's a learning curve. We're all figuring it out.
actually, I believe at their meeting minutes, the town manager has tried to kind of shepherd them back into the right direction. And potentially, I think Bill Moore was at that same meeting with the insect control district to no avail. And another reason why I'm just voicing my concern tonight is because at that meeting of the trustees, that yourself, Doug, and I get that you have a protective nature, but to stand up and to tell them to hang in there, and it felt like, we're the bad guys because we're questioning them, and that you kind of were coming to.
I'm not saying anyone's a bad guy. I was saying that a year ago, the select board was under duress, and we could have all walked away, or we could listen to what the people were saying and work on the items that were creating distrust or concerns to the citizens, and that's what we did, and I think we're better for that. So that's my reason to. They're not used to having a meeting with a bunch of people there. So they were sitting up here that morning looking like deer in the headlights of a car. I was trying to at least allow them the wisdom that I have had over 10 years on the select board, that sometimes you have an angry crowd and sometimes you don't, and you need to work with it. And when I was telling them to hang in there was to, not put their head down and bang their head on the table or walk out and quit. But it is what it is. Everyone has their own opinion on how they feel this should go. And I have my own, and I'll be very happy when it's resolved and the town can move on to better things. So, other comments? Brent Bueller, one more time. Yes.
Brent Bueller. It's admirable when people make mistakes and they admit it, but these folks don't seem to want to do that. Seth outlined to them that it was the town's money, and therefore it is all of our money, and it should be used for sewer and sanitation. Now, this is what Seth said, and that those applications for funds should come through him. And I agree with it. So you folks will either support Seth on this or you won't. Now, they've hired an attorney not that long ago to interpret the will, and that's what got us here today. That and the fact that none of us paid attention. That's on us. I admit I made a mistake. I didn't pay attention. So if they just said, okay, but they don't want to. They want to double down, which doesn't make any sense to me at all. I hope you will support Seth in this, and I hope that that money will go for sewer and sanitation and not these other things. Now, at the last meeting, again, when Seth had put in a application for $20,000 for that sampling thing, they tabled everything until they could consult an attorney. Now, they've only given SolarFest $10,000. Another $10,000 is due July 1st. So if they're unsure about their mission statement or what they should be doing, then they should not be dispersing another $10,000 to SolarFest until they are clear on that. That's my opinion. Now, you all wrote a letter supporting SolarFest, I guess the walkway. I don't know if you knew that $20,000 of the trust fund was involved in that. But again, none of us were paying attention. Our bad, but now we are. We're paying attention now. And they just need to admit they made a mistake. Forgiveness begins with that. Otherwise, if they want to double down, hey, we'll double down. We'll double down. That's a shame.
Okay, I'd just like to note, as Mr. Hopkins has said, we can't control how the trustees disperse the funds. That's their elected job. We can state our opinion of how they should do it, and we can put in our requests for it. But the only way, if we really wanted to fight them, would be to spend taxpayer money and take them to court. And, that's kind of a question. Is that what we want to spend our money on when some of the money that they've dispersed? And I can understand the concerns that have been raised about some of the dispersants. Some of them don't make a lot of sense when you look at Shirley Farr's will. But again, that's not something we can control other than to spend taxpayer funds to take them to court and seek a declaratory judgment.
Jan. Aaron, I guess.
Yeah, Doug, Jan had her hand up before.
What do we got? Oh, okay.
Jan Coolidge. So the town of Brandon has a conflict of interest and ethics policy, right? On the town's website, there is a link for the trustees of public funds. We go to the ballot box. We vote for the trustees of public funds. It's on the Brandon town ballot. So why don't they fall under that umbrella? When that committee was first set up, how was it set up? It's like, how can you say it doesn't fall under the town when everything is involved with the town?
Right. The conflict of interest policy and the ethics policy, they do fall under that. What I'm talking about is the decisions that they make in how they disperse the funds. Those aren't conflicts of interest. Those are disputes over the language of the bequest. And so it goes more to their fiduciary duty as trustees, which is not a conflict of interest issue and it's not an ethics issue. It's a totally different kind of issue. And so we can't use the conflict of interest policy to go after their funding decisions. The only thing we can do is if there is a funding decision that directly financially or indirectly financially benefits one of them, or directly personally or indirectly personally benefits one of them, that's when it falls under the conflict of interest policy. But if it's just a decision that we disagree with in terms of the language of the will, like whether the path, the Estegroup path, or whether giving money to something that benefits students in Pittsford as well as students in Brandon, those aren't ethical conflict of interest policies. Those are separate issues.
It's like you got to look back to when the first one was formed, that first trustee of public funds. Who gave him the authority?
State statute.
So the state statute says if you're a trustee of public funds, that you don't have to report to anybody, even though you fall under the town of Brandon. It's just like more research needs to be done.
They do report, just let me clarify, they do report every year in our town report. There's a page that states what things that they looked at, whether they approved it and funded it, or if they didn't fund it. So there is reporting in our annual report for those who might have read it. And now Karen, yep.
Hi, Karen Rhodes. At the last trustees of public funds meeting, I believe Seth brought up that taxpayer money could be saved by not spending money on the infrastructure for sewer and various sanitation and mosquito projects. So my question, I guess, is if you want to defend using taxpayers' money to defend this spending that is not related to the trust, I'm saying, in my opinion, defend the trust and stop the rampant spending and stop the waste and save the taxpayers' money through the infrastructure and the use of money towards infrastructure and maintaining a safe and sanitary community. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire, and then I'd love to wrap up this subject so we can get home.
Neil's got his hand
Oh.
up.
Who does?
Oh, sorry.
Neil? Your husband wants to talk too. He probably wants to know when you're coming home.
Hi, honey.
I just wanted to say,
Right.
I've heard.
I don't know if that was a sexist comment or not.
Go ahead, Claire. You go first.
Okay. So I have a hard time, and this has been brought up before, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but there's a lot of common sense. We've been looking at this money stuff and the $12 million alleged community center that had $12 million to be put on our property taxes. ECC doesn't exist. They don't have, they're not incorporated. You can try and find them on the web. They are not there. Neither are they a nonprofit. So what I see them bringing is the possibility of construction from which they will make money off of us, 12 million in property taxes. And so the guy who says with the other two ladies, yep, let's give 20,000 to VCC. And the guy who's the chair of the trust money is now over here at Otter Valley talking about VCC, which does not exist, and waving his hands and changing the parameters of VCC altogether. One guy on both sides of the aisle. How is that not a conflict of interest?
I didn't say it wasn't a conflict of interest, so I didn't. Who are you asking?
I'm asking the world here, you know, and just a comment, sir. You're like a love-hate relationship. You know, we do.
So I know, Claire, I tend to oversimplify things which frustrate you from time to time, which is okay.
But
to me, that whole thing was put to bed the night there was an election at Otter Valley that said they weren't getting the land in VCC.
It's still a conflict of interest.
Okay.
It's a conflict of interest. I thought that's what we were looking at, was a conflict of interest.
And that's what they.
So that exists regardless of what the vote outcome was. Nobody said who they were and what they were doing. And that whole meeting was kept under wraps. Okay, it was. We had to go out and warn the public that this was coming. Yes, we won, but that doesn't pardon people from playing both sides of the aisle. I have the money. I'm going to run over here, give it to myself, and I'm going to do this. How is that not understood by everybody in this room? It's a conflict of interest, and it was never talked about. Never talked about. Conspiracies, when things are not transparent, people get paranoid, and conspiracies exist all the time. I'm not looking to make any up. I'm not a conspiracy person, but to say that there is no foul play here is, I think, being blind. Really.
Okay, let me clarify. That was specific to what happened at with the land that the Humane Society was looking to acquire. I wanted to make sure that Vicky knew and that the public knows that there was no conspiracy to enrich Tanner Romano with regard to that.
Why is his name not on there with the workforce? Who's the workforce? We know who Mimi Brown is and Rutland Animal Humane Society, and his is over there with a new name called Workforce.
I mean, you'd have to ask Tanner about that.
I'm asking you because
well-
that's what you guys called it. Now, how do we, when we start looking at Workforce and now find out it's Tanner and he's doing these other things that look kind of fishy, I'm starting to wonder what's going on with him. Now I'm starting to worry about Naylor and Green and all the contracts he's getting from town and what is going on here.
So I know that Tanner Romano, or an organization associated with Tanner Romano, acquired the Compass Music and Arts Center and applied for and received a permit to build workforce housing at what was formerly the Compass Music and Arts Center.
I know.
So I know that is a common practice amongst folks that develop properties or develop buildings to create LLCs separate from that to make those things happen so they can apply for monies. That would be my assumption as to why that is Workforce Housing LLC, because I know that he was looking to build workforce housing, and that was that was what they presented to the Development Review Board and got approved for housing up there. So I assume that's why it's called Workforce LLC.
I can only tell you that if his name or Naylor and Breen come up, I'm going to look extra hard because I don't look like the shade that I see in the transactions, the lack of names, all these LLCs that are going on. And Seth, thank you for your statement last week. It was beautiful. And you are the person who has the final yes or no over that money. Is that not clear? Is that not what you shared with us? From the
So my belief about
Shirley Forest?
the fund is that the trustees need to keep the money safe. They need to optimize the return to be responsible trustees. And I believe that they have an obligation if the town goes to them and asks them for funding that's in line with the bequest. I believe that they have an obligation to meet that request. I do also believe that they have an obligation to tell the town no if the town goes to them and asks for money that Shirley Farr did not contemplate. I really think that if I went to the trustees and said, I would like money as the town of Brandon to buy a police car, I believe they should tell the town no, because that has nothing to do with what Shirley said in her will.
Exactly.
But I believe if I say I need to buy some wastewater sampling equipment, I believe that they have to say yes. I believe that their job is less discretionary than they think it is.
So I am right there with you. I support you 100%. And that's all we were trying to bring out in February before that vote ever happened, because it didn't smell right. And we did a lot of digging, and we did it on our own because nobody was paying attention until we were. And you're not getting 20,000 for the water test. Is that correct?
It's not on the agenda for action on Thursday.
Okay.
Right.
But didn't you already ask for that?
I did
Or-
ask.
No.
I asked on May 1st. They did not say no. They just didn't take it up.
And I am sorry for you two that you got whacked in the bottom of that letter. I also had a personal experience here last Thursday where Tanner put words in my mouth. And I told him I'd sue his ass because he is the kind of person, I believe, that thinks that he can get over and threaten people. And I want him to clearly know that we are not afraid. We are fighters, and we give a shit about this town big time. And we want everybody to have a fair chance here. And when people come in with tons of money and are making deals and getting utility breaks and all kinds of stuff, it's not okay. It needs to be transparent. And I'm glad I'm not sitting up there today, but I'm not surprised he would write something that wasn't true because that's who he is. He tried it here in public with.
Yes, you.
Neil, would you like to follow?
I think not. I had one thing that I wanted to comment.
Wise man, Neil.
I had one thing that I wanted to comment on, which was not exactly what has been discussed so far. That a couple times conflict of interest and can't remember the other word, but terms had come up that, you know, are they, is the board of the trustees of public funds, are they covered by the same ethics and conflict of interest? And Cecil, a couple times you said they're not covered under that because they're not covered under the town's statement of ethics, etc. And I think that they're common terms. They're not limited to the town of Brandon. Whatever realm they exist in, there is conflict of interest and ethics.
Okay, I may not have been clear. I thought that I had made it clear. They are covered by the town's conflicts of interest and ethics policy. What I was trying to say was that a lot of the decisions that people are raising as questionable and concerning are not conflicts of interest or ethical problems. They go to the interpretation of the will and their disbursement of the funds under that interpretation, which is not covered by the conflicts of interest policy. It may be an issue of fiduciary duties and whether they are complying with fiduciary duties, but that's not something that the select board can investigate or act on.
Okay, I stand corrected.
And in the code of ethics complaint field, there are two different kinds of ratings on that from the state training. One is that there is an actual conflict of interest where someone used their position to benefit financially from something happening. And then there's a second level, which is a perceived conflict of interest. And that one is harder to define and clarify. But, you know, clearly that is what our two people have been working on. And the select board really has not even read that entire report yet. Tonight is what we want to get to if we get to it before midnight. Oh, one last time.
Well, Faith
What?
is raising her hand and she hasn't spoken yet. Faith.
Yes, please. Oh, no. You've been quiet all night long.
I know. I actually went through and read the minutes going back. Oh, Faith Dyer, sorry. Going back in time, and I would encourage you to do so because there are some, in fact, Sugeja, who's here, did call out that they were in violation of open meeting law. And there were other violations as well included in the minutes and letters from her. So I think that's key to some of the issues with this board. I also thank Seth for bringing up some of the points. I also do think that the town of Brandon, be it the select board or in general, the town has some responsibility in overseeing how those funds are spent. I know that it's a mandated committee from the state of Vermont if there are trust funds to be spent in, and that we do need to look at Shirley Farr's wishes and look at them, the spending that happened in violation of those wishes. I don't know what that would fall under, but I certainly we agree that it's not a conflict of interest, but it is in violation of a trust. Thank you.
Dan, one last time, Vicky, and then I'm going to move on.
First of all, I would like to say if the trustees do have one saving grace, it's their minute taking. Because they were very transparent and took very good minutes, and I do intend to commend them on that Thursday at their meeting. Secondly, to the perception of a conflict, I think all you had to do is remember how full these rooms have been to know what the perception is. So obvious answer to that one. And I don't think that there's levels. I don't think that they say like a first and second degree offense. I think the offense is the same no matter whether it's perceived or real.
Right.
Is my interpretation. And then just to speak to my conspiracy theory here, and not an accusation, I am just pointing out what appears clear to me as someone who spends a lot of time reading meeting minutes. There is a lot, this whole page is about the boundary line adjustment. All words. And when we get to the motion made by the select board person, seconded by another select board person, and I'm not going to call those individuals out because I'm not here to throw anybody in specific under the bus. But the motion is to adjust the boundary line at Jones Drive / Favor Circle to square off parcel 6-1-58.11 and to adjust the boundary line for the Rutland County Humane Society for parcel 6-1-58.15 and then more words. But the point is, like, who remembers those numbers to make a motion this detailed without some sort of a note in front of them? Thank you.
I just point out that we often have notes in front of us as to how to make detailed motions, because the motions have to be detailed.
All those numbers, why not the name of the person who owns the second parcel? Thank you.
Other public comments? Not on this issue. A different issue of any. None heard.
Recess.
What?
Take a short recess.
And we shall have a 5-minute recess before we go into executive session. Thank you very much for participating. Come out of recess at whatever time it is. 9:35. We have a motion for executive session?
Yes, I move that we enter executive session pursuant to 1 Vermont Statutes Annotated, Section 313 Sub A Sub 3, read the appointment/employment/evaluation of a public officer or employee. And we are going to be addressing the Select Board report on investigation into municipal ethics complaint.
Second, someone? Second. All in favor of entering executive session, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Pause. Mikes. Okay, it's 10 minutes past 10 minutes past 10, and we're coming out of executive session. 2 points of action taken would be, one, on a previous meeting, we suggested a letter to our town voters to clarify and give the recent information on our police department and recruiting. And so we have approved to submit a letter to the Brandon Reporter to our citizens regarding the police department. And that one?
Yes. The second action to be taken and ratified is the adoption of the report of the subcommittee investigating the ethics complaints against Kenna Romano and Laura Minor of the Trustees of Public Funds. The board has adopted the select board report on the investigation into municipal ethics complaint, a copy of which will be sent to the complainant and to Mr. Romano and Ms. Minor immediately, and to be released publicly 24 hours later. We need to.
Do we need to vote on that or just?
Yeah.
So I move to adopt the letter in support of the law enforcement.
I would prefer someone that wasn't on the.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt the report. Pardon?
The police.
Letter.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Letter, okay. We have a motion and a second to adopt the letter to approve the letter to go to the reporter regarding our police department staffing levels at this time. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one. Item 2 is this one is a motion to adopt the report from our investigating subcommittee on the ethics complaint filed by Mr. Bueller regarding the trustees of public funds. That will be
Delivered to Mr. Bueller and the trustees immediately upon adoption. And to be released publicly 24 hours later.
okay. We have that as a motion.
Second.
Okay, motion for a second. All in favor of adopting the report, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no one. And that is how we will proceed with that item. No further business on our agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Coolidge makes a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye.
You get a second?
I second
He-
it.
Oh, sorry.
And I'm taking the note.
And he's typing, so he's